Hey, everybody, welcome to the Daniel Davis Deep Dive Intelligence Brief, the best of what we learned this week and the newest of information you need to make sense of your world around you. And we have a lot today. Let's jump right into it. First of all, let's talk about the issue that's on the front of everybody's mind. Will there or won't there be war in Iran? Might it start even tonight? That's what we're going to try to figure out. And there has been, even just in the last 24 hours, not quite yet on that, Gary. In the last 24 hours, there's been a lot of information and a lot of additional planes have landed here. Let me just give you a few of the issues that really indicate that something is coming very big and likely coming very soon. About 15% of the global fleet of aerial refueling tankers, about 58 in the last about 48 hours, have deployed into zones where they can launch an attack from. That is an enormous. I think that brings to the total 109 aerial refueling tankers. There are somewhere between, depending on who's doing the counting and what they're counting, somewhere between 200 and 250 fighter aircraft on top of a lot of the deployments that have already existed. Some of the things that are within range there. And as Gary's showing you there, some of them are located in Jordan. Some others are, according to satellite imagery released by the Chinese of all people. Some are in Saudi Arabia. I mean, they're literally all over the map. Gary periodically shows you that one with our bases throughout the region. They're dotted everywhere throughout there. There's also a lot, surprisingly, in European bases. A lot of the things that we can bring to bear here will depart from U.S. air bases, even in Europe. There was a big issue with whether the UK would accept that. More on that in just a minute. But the bottom line is here. This is on top of, and one of the other categories I do want to point out is that somewhere around 150 C-17 and C-5 transport. That is literally 50% of the C-17 transport. Those are those great big, almost looking like a 747, but they're for transporting things. You could literally play a game of basketball in the back of one of those. I've when I was on active duty, I several times took a C-17 transport going from one place to another in the Middle East, and it's cavernous. It's like a flying gym. C-5s are even bigger. It's just amazing how big those things. Yeah, there it is. Thank you very much. You see that how big those things are, and there is an enormous amount of kit and gear and ammunition above all that can be flown on those. So that tells you a couple of things. Number one, that this is going to be a sustained operation. This is not going to be a strike like some of the things that have happened in the past. It's not going to be like Operation Midnight Hammer, which was basically a 2-hour operation where we allegedly hit, or not allegedly, but hit a couple of nuclear facilities, and then that was the end of it. This is being set up for a sustained campaign. Possibly weeks, possibly even months. I mean, we have all the assets there that this can continue on for months in terms of refueling and rearmament. All those things are necessary. When you're talking about this many aircraft coming in from all these different places throughout Europe, throughout the Middle East, it's like flying gas stations. You may have heard some of the descriptions about that. That's what some of these aerial refueling tankers can do. And all of that tells everybody that right now, all the pieces are in place that this could launch as early as tonight. Whether it will or not remains to be seen. That's a political decision. It's not a military one. In terms of the military capacity, the pieces are in place now. One of the things that may go into the decision is going to be just how important to the overall campaign plan is the USS Gerald R. Ford, which has passed through Gibraltar, I think, a day or so ago, and it won't be fully in position until, I think, Friday, a week from yesterday. So it could be that President Trump is going to say, I want to wait until all my information or all my assets are in place so that we can handle everything. Because I think a good portion of what the Gerald R. Ford is going to bring is going to be air defense capacity, both for Israel, especially if it's coming in through the Med, and if it stays there, if it doesn't swing south and go through a different path to get back into the Gulf of Oman where the Abraham Lincoln is. If it comes straight on in there, then it can be in position faster. And I think that is primarily going to be used for air defense to try to intercept, especially drones that might be coming from Iran into Israel or against our bases in the region. But it's important to understand that's not necessary to bring this to a launch point. We already have everything we need. And if this is indeed going to be a multi-week, if not multi-month campaign, then it's not really that consequential if the fort itself is all the way there or nearly all the way there, because it's going to be needed in any case, and it's going to be something that's going to be happening for a long time. Well, I just real briefly want to talk to you about how this thing may go and how it might start. Because it's going to be real important. So, a good portion of those fighter jets that I just mentioned there are going to be used on phase one, and that is going to be to destroy enemy radars, the Iranian radars, and their air defense. Gary, if you can put that graphic up there, this is one of the things that really shows what is going to happen in the beginning. You've got 40 radar-killing aircraft. Those are, I think, the either F-15s or 16, I forget right off the top of my head, and F-18 Growlers, some of our most technically competent, capable aircraft, specifically designed to destroy and blind the Iranian air defense missiles. Now, we've put that graphic. I don't know, Gary, if we still have the one with the air defense capability for Iran up there and where they have these, but these are scattered all throughout the country, and this is going to be a very difficult task. The issue with a lot of these radar killers is going to be, can they get within range of launching their missiles to be able to and not be hit by the long-range radars of the Iranian side, because some of these radars have hundreds of kilometers of range on them where they can detect them coming in from a long way. And the question will be then, if they see these radar-killing planes, the F-18s, the F-15s, F-16s, all these different categories, F-35s, F-22s, all these things, if they see these things coming in from a long range, it seems reasonable to suggest that they may start trying to launch their air defense interceptors for anti-aircraft missiles, launch them early. Because if those vehicles get in close, then they're going to have a pretty high probability of hitting what they're shooting at. Part of the problem that we're going to have, though, is, according to some reports that I have read, is that map, Gary, do you still have that one of the air defense bases and the air? We don't have that one handy, do we? Okay. It's spread throughout the whole forward edge of the country, and I mean, it's a massive hundreds and hundreds of kilometers of territory, and they're dotted. And you may have seen that map we showed earlier this week, to where there's lots of terrain, there's lots of crags, mountainous. Yeah, there it is. Thank you, Gary. You see that these things are embedded into area where you have protection, and makes it difficult just from the terrain itself. They're on the sides of mountains. Some of them are buried underneath. And from what we can understand is a lot of these are not even out in the open yet. Many of them are hidden into underground bunkers, and they will only come out when there are targets in the air over their country. Then they can come out. So it's not an easy, clean situation to where, because the way this is going to be pitched is, okay, well, these Growlers and these other aircraft are going to come in and, quote, knock out the air defense and their radar first, and then other waves, subsequent bombers are going to come in and start doing other kinds of damage. Well, that's great in theory, and that's kind of how it did work in Operation Iraqi Freedom. And I think that part of the problem that we may have is that we still think that what happened in the past is going to happen in the future, and everything is going to work wonderful, and we'll be able to blind them right off the bat, and then we'll just have our way, because that's how people claim that what happened in 2025 in June is that we decimated all of their capability of anti-aircraft, and then it was a free reign in the air. It's not clear that that's exactly what happened. There were some things. Israel did have some on-the-ground saboteurs that were able to knock a lot of things out. They did some cyber attacks, etc., some physical attacks on the inside, and apparently it did nearly paralyze a lot of their capability for, I think, 9 to 12 hours. After that, they recovered, and then it was a different story after that. But the Israeli and American jets did not come, according to reports that we've seen, into the airspace, so that even after Iran got their radar back up, the vehicles, the air power would fire from a standoff distance, kind of like the Russians do against Ukraine. They have lots of anti-aircraft capability in Ukraine, but the Russian jets will not get within those range, and they'll fire their missiles from a distance, and then they'll come and fall on the target, and they'll never come within range. That's apparently what we did and the Israelis did in the 12-day war last year. Now, for what we're trying to get done now, though, you can't do that. If you're just going to fire some at specific pinpoint targets, there are some things you can hit. But if you're going to have to go over all of these targets that are scattered throughout the country, and especially the offensive missile capability, you're going to have to fly over the country, and that is where you're going to take some risk. And I'll just tell you this straight up. Nobody knows what's going to happen in a war of this magnitude. I don't know. These experts who claim they do, they don't, because it's never been attempted. We have never tried to fight a war of a sustained nature like this against an enemy that has modern anti-aircraft capability, that has learned from how we have succeeded in the past, and has apparently changed what they're going to do and how they're going to operate. If you think that what happened in June of last year is going to be the same thing, the same target array that you're going to have now, you're in for a big surprise, because Iran is not stupid. And so they're certainly not just going to repeat what didn't work last time. You can count on the fact that they will find workarounds, just like the Ukrainians did in their war, just like the Russians have done. Every time something works, the other side figures it out, and then they have a counteraction, and then counteraction and counteraction so far. So don't think that it's just going to replay of what happened in 2025. We can expect some things different. But in terms of what's going to happen now, once you get these targets here, then you're going to start going after a lot of the regime leaders. If the regime change is the genuine operation, then once they have stripped away the air defense, if this works, this is the plan. Stripped away the air defense, the radars, the anti-aircraft missile batteries. Then they're going to go after the offensive missile batteries. I would imagine that's priority target number one, is to take out the missile batteries, the offensive missile batteries, to limit the potential risk to our troops at our bases in the region, and to limit the risk to Israel. Then maybe concurrent with that, then there'll be maybe some other assets that start going after regime elements. They'll go after the IRGC. They'll go after, even within Tehran and some of the other big cities, they'll go after the barracks of the IRGC, the Basij, the kinds of the security forces that are used to keep down protests. The idea being that if you get rid of the ability to secure the country from the inside, then it gives the idea, the hope that the protesters can then rise up. And you can be sure that that's a concurrent part of this too, that this is being communicated to the inside so that the protesters can come back up again, because the idea will be something like what happened against Libya in Muammar Gaddafi in 2011, to where there was a lot of allied air power that came in and started hitting the regime's security apparatus, and then the protesters came up and then overtook what was left over, and that's how they ended up knocking it out then. I think that's probably a real big issue, what they're going to try to get done in this case now here. All that is theoretical. We don't know. I mean, how many of these missiles from the Iranian side may get through American bases? How many casualties might we have? What if we don't succeed in getting all their radars knocked out? What if they end up having some of these, the DF-17s or some commensurate missiles? What if the Iranian indigenously made hypersonics actually are able to penetrate our own air defenses to some degree? And we start losing ships, or at least ships start getting hit, planes start getting knocked out, Israeli cities start getting hit in bigger concentrations than they did in the last time. And what if we can't stop it? What if these air defense missiles that they have and the air defense batteries are indeed, many of them, hidden? And so after you think they're clear and you come in, all of a sudden additional numbers start popping out while you're in the air, and now then you can't defend against those because they weren't knocked out. Those are all things that are theoretical, but nobody knows what's going to happen. I don't have not any insider information. I don't have any sources, anything that can tell me what the Iranians are or are not doing, but I can just tell you from a military analysis and from like what we have seen really in history of warfare. You can go back to World War I, World War II, the Korean War, the Vietnam War, and definitely the Russia-Ukraine War. And you see the same dynamics happen, to where you have action, counteraction, and then reaction, et cetera. So you keep having military advancements in one category. It has an initial success. The other side tries to counteract. Then they throw their own in there, et cetera. That's what happens in a sustained war. Now, most of our stuff is in the past has been these sharp and crisp and powerful blows, and then we're out, like Venezuela, like the so-called 12-day war, many things. And we don't do well when things drag out, a la Vietnam, a la the Afghanistan war, et cetera. So those are all the things that we're going to have to pay attention to and see what plays out. And I think within the first 72 hours, we'll know a long way. If it turns out that the U.S. does blind their radars and does knock out all their air defense, this could be it could be over quickly. Or even if we succeed in that, if the Iranian side has been smart and they have dispersed their power and their regime power, and they can survive a lot of these shots, even to the IRGC on the internal security forces, again, their priority of effort is to merely survive. To succeed, they have to survive. They have to be like the Houthis and just drag this out even a decade, like the Houthis did against Saudi Arabia with all of their extraordinary superior combat power, along with the support from the United States. Then subsequently, the Israelis tried to do it. We tried to knock them out. Nobody succeeded. That will be their template. If they can just survive and continue to offer resistance, then they are going to succeed. Because if we get into a long, drawn-out war that's inconsequential, that doesn't have a result, it's going to be a real problem politically at home for the president. And so that's why I tell you, he is taking an enormous, enormous risk. And if you can't bring it to a conclusion and it drags out and there are a sizable number of casualties, then it's going to be a real problem. In my view, President Trump is taking a profound risk here that has almost no possibility of an upside. I don't see any, quote, best case scenario that is beneficial to the president from where he is right now, before anything's been launched. Whatever may come, if everything works right, I don't see anything that would be more secure, more capable than what we have now. And for those who say, oh, well, if you knock out the Iranian regime, then all of a sudden this threat is gone. Listen, that's what too many people don't get. There is no threat of attack from the Iranian side right now without any war. 1979, folks, from that time until now, they have never posed a threat to us. They don't pose any kind of existential threat to the United States. They don't even pose a threat of actual attack. Understand, they have a lot of powerful missiles and have for a long time. And there's a reason why they have only used them in a defensive nature, because they're not stupid and they're not going to precipitate an action that they can't win. See, if they start a war, then they have to be able to win it on offensive terms. And they can't. And they know they can't. So they will never start one. But they have a defensive reactive capability so that if we launch something, they have the capacity to make it very painful and bloody on our case. And that's what their objective will be, is to make it as hard as possible on the U.S. so that we get tired of a war that doesn't even need to be fought. And it really doesn't. So when you look at it like that, you can understand and make sure everybody is clear on this. There is no, quote, upside that we would be better on the backside, even if the regime falls. Even if we succeed in that, all we're going to be doing is exchanging one regime for another. All we're going to do is creating more chaos in the region, not bringing stability, not bringing peace and freedom for all the people. It's just bringing chaos, which I think is part of the plan, and it won't go well for America. That's the so-called best case scenario. There's a lot of bad case scenarios, though, that would be really, really bad, which is why I think President Trump is literally risking the rest of his presidency, his domestic agenda even, on this right here. So I hope that a miracle happens and he doesn't end up launching, because it would be bad for everybody. Israeli people, American soldiers, Iranian civilians. Nobody would benefit from this, and everybody will lose something in it. Let's be clear on that. Everybody will lose. Nobody will gain anything if we take this foolish decision. We'll wait and see how that's going to work out. Let's go back and look at some of the things, though, that we learned this week, because they are really, really relevant to what may be coming here in the next number of hours or days. And let's start off looking, first of all, at Trita Parsi, because he was coming on saying, listen, let's kind of take a look at how this thing started and whose interests are really on the line.
Take a look at what happened after December 29th. It seems like Netanyahu was quite successful, perhaps beyond anything many people had expected. I certainly had not expected. And my prediction was that the Israelis would attack Iran before end of the year. Instead, it appears that he went there and he managed to convince Trump to take the lead on this. Instead of Israelis leading the attack and the U.S. supporting it, the U.S. itself would lead us, because we saw how Trump really took ownership of the coming war. And we saw how Netanyahu took a very, very silent position. For several weeks, he didn't say anything publicly about this. That to me was the worst sign, because it essentially meant that he was confident that he had put things in the right trajectory for him and that there would be a war. And he was being silent in order to reduce the criticism against Trump from his own base that he was doing this for Israel. Trump himself took the lead, took ownership of this, and allowed the Israelis to essentially get away. Then something happens in the talks that apparently changes the equation. And Netanyahu comes back to the United States. And by all accounts, that meeting did not appear to be particularly successful. Now, is it deception? It's interesting that now suddenly Netanyahu is actually going out there, putting red lines for the talks, putting criteria for what the talks need to achieve in order to be successful. Again, back to that type of a public posture of pressuring Trump from the outside, something he hadn't done for about 5 weeks because things were going his way. It appears things are not going his way right now. And as a result, he's back trying to influence and sabotage the talks from the outside. The same game plan he has had for more than 20 years. What is it that is so threatening to the US's core national interest that necessitates not an engagement, not addressing it, but necessitates military action? There is no such thing. This is all about the interest of the Israelis and the manner in which they're pushing for this.
And it couldn't have been any more clearly laid out. And his last point there are no core interests of America that is at stake that would in any way, shape, or form necessitate the use of armed force. I won't beat the dead horse anymore, but of course, it's also in direct violation of our U.S. Constitution, the 1973 War Powers Act, and international law. Other than that, it's perfectly fine because you can just do whatever you feel like doing. That's one of the things that is really a big problem. And it's interesting because he painted a very clear picture of how this is definitely in the definite interest, not of Israel. I don't even go that far. Benjamin Netanyahu. It is his desire, and of course, many of his political ilk inside that are currently in the governing coalition, they have a lot of people that desire that. But that is this coterie, this elite coterie in Israel that desires to, they somehow have convinced themselves that there is an upside. They think that it would be good to create chaos, to destroy the regime. Somehow they think that's going to bring them success. I think it is just fatally flawed, and it's terrible analysis, and it's myopic in terms of historical understanding. It has no understanding of the human condition. It pays no attention to even just in the last several decades about how people in the Middle East respond to things. I mean, I think it is building up all kinds of disaster. However, that does not impact and limit their ability to push a bad situation anyway, using all of their political influence and all of their other influence. And unfortunately, if this was just the Israeli side and that they were making their case and they were advocating, that would be one thing. You might even roll your eyes on it. But unfortunately, they have a lot of help on the United States. And go back and look at our videos here. You'll see one I did yesterday, Merchants of Death, which shows how so many major figures in the United States are just falling all over themselves to advocate for the position of Israel, for the position of Benjamin Netanyahu, not for the needs of the United States. I just want to make sure we're all crystal clear on that. Go back and look at that video. Moving on here, because Jeremy Scahill, also for the first time we had him of Dropsite News, also been an excellent independent journalist in the region for decades. Really, really excellent work that he's done. And according to his source, he's got a bunch of them. He's developed them for well over a decade. He says, from his perspective, we are setting the stage for a potential catastrophe.
I think these guys got so high on their own supply off of that Venezuela operation that they start thinking, we can do this again. And it's not that I think they're going to go and try to kidnap the supreme leader of Iran. I think they may be convincing themselves, listen, if we whack the upper echelons of that society, we can go to the people next down from it and say, you want to make a deal? No? Okay, we kill you too. You know, this sort of mafia type stuff. I think that's possible with it. This isn't Iraq. Iran had an Islamic revolution in 1979. There are no armed rebel groups trying to overthrow the Iranian government. The diaspora Iranians, you either have people in the camp of Pahlavi, the Shah's son, who is a totally discredited figure, who has never set foot in Iran and has lived his entire life off of stolen money of the Iranian people. And then you have like cults like the MEK who cozy up to power in Washington but have no actual base. It's not like Syria where you had multiple armed groups. So what's the day after look like in Iran? Okay, you overthrow the Iranian government. Then what? This isn't Libya. This isn't Syria. This is a catastrophe waiting to happen. And Iran is a nation of institutions. It's not just the supreme leader.
Yeah, and that's one of the things too. If you understand, they think if you get lucky and you hit, and I actually seen in U.S. Media this morning that some reports are that I think it was through Axios that says that the United States may be going after Khomeini and his son, thinking, hey, if we knock these first two out, then the regime will fall. Well, that doesn't understand. First of all, the first thing about how the Iranian system of governance is actually set up, because it's not just one man, it's a whole system of things set up. And by the way, they have openly told us that they already have continuity of government plans in. So even if you get them, you have to understand there's already people designated ready to step up, and they know it is no joke the capability that the United States and Israel has. They know there is a very real possibility that they could be assassinated, and they're ready to respond to that. The people in Iran are ready to understand that they may move on to whoever's next in the chain of command, and they'll continue on down that. No doubt they have 2 and 3 deep, maybe even more than that, already designated, and they would continue to follow that pattern. And it's just unlikely you're going to kill that many people. So he is right, and for many of the reasons we've already articulated here in this show. So I don't want to belabor that any more distance. I want to move on to something else that Patrick Henningsen had on this week, because he's saying, listen, one of the other problems that he sees, and certainly this is something I agree with a lot, is that there are too many people, and like Jeremy Scahill just mentioned here, and he cited all these others, it's not Libya, this is not Syria, etc. This is not Venezuela. Too many people think that some of these operations that have worked out really successfully, at least on the surface level, think that, well, because those have worked out, this one will too.
It's not a good thing to assume that Iran doesn't have weapons that can overcome many of the difficulties in targeting U.S. assets, okay? The missiles that were used during True Promise 3 in June was conveyed to me by a general in the missile program that's 6 years old. So the next 2 generations of hypersonic missiles and other ballistic missiles were not used in June, okay? And they also have totally different targeting systems that haven't been unveiled either, including the ability to hit moving targets, i.e. naval frigates and ships. So not only that, they don't use the same GPS systems that the United States use. They have their own proprietary data links, and they also incorporate some of the Chinese Baidu guidance systems as well. You have to remember the Iranians have been able to intercept U.S. uplinks between drones and satellites and completely capture state-of-the-art U.S. drones and land them in mint condition.
So listen, he's laying out a lot of things here, and there's not a lot of media coverage on this. I'm going to touch on that in a second as well. But that's one of the things that I think is not even in the minds of our policy leaders who should know these things. And one wonders if, of course, they have access to classified information, not just what journalists can come up with or what we can piece together through looking at physical evidence and observing what happened in the last time that force was used, et cetera, and doing analysis of all these different places and understanding the pros and cons of what's going on. These people have a lot more detailed information about what these capabilities are. And if they're doing their job, they also understand our capabilities and limitations. Take it off the chest beating kind of thing about how we're the greatest in the history of the world and all that. Behind the scenes, I think that there's enough sober-minded analysts that says, okay, here's what our systems can do. Here's what they can't do. Here's the limits of what they can do. Here's what their stuff is. So where is their overlap and where is their vulnerabilities on our part? Let's be careful. There doesn't seem to be any of that. We do seem to be at the policy level assuming that we'll be able to get this done. Now, I don't think anyone, President Trump on down, assumes that this will be as easy as Venezuela. I'm sure that they don't think that. But I worry that they think it's going to be like it was last June, to where the same thing that happened then will happen again, or like with these attacking these boats in the Caribbean will happen, that you can just knock them out, like what happened in Syria, both in the United States before with some assassinations that we had even in Baghdad in the last couple of years, or others that Israel has had into Syria, that basically they can go in and take everything out. And I worry that Israeli experience may be in the minds of many in the United States, because after Bashar al-Assad fell from power, Israel went in almost immediately and started just devastating their military capacity of what was left of Syria all over the place, and almost no consequence to Israel. And I fear that people think it'll be the same in Iran. It's very unlikely to be. I can't even say categorically it won't, because until we've actually tried it against them at this scale, we can't say. But like Patrick Henningsen pointed out there, like I have in some other categories, the evidence indicates that Iran is not like Syria, that they do have capability. They have demonstrated it in some regards, especially in both 2024 and 2025, the 2 rounds in 24 and the 1 in 25. They have demonstrated that they do have some real capability, and we have not seen them really use it at scale. So if they do what they did there at a limited scale, at big scale, things could change very much. And I worry that we're not giving that enough thought, and we're literally rolling the dice and putting everything on one number and hoping everything works out for us like it has in the past. And especially with this much combat power, that's a real problem. One other thing that I did show you this week, I think it was just yesterday, may have been, is Keir Starmer made some news in the UK, because he says, hey, United States, you cannot use one of the RAF bases just to the little, I think it's to the west of London a little bit. You can't use that for an attack on Iran. They said, because it could be illegal and we don't want to be guilty by association, etc. Well, that didn't sit well with Boris Johnson. And you may remember him. The main thing we've shown him here is because he's the one who sabotaged peace operations in Ukraine by convincing Volodymyr Zelensky not to have a negotiated settlement in 2022, in April of 2022 in Istanbul. Well, he's also, I guess this guy loves war as much as Lindsey Graham, because he took to social media to blast the prime minister.
Hi, folks. The Iranian campaign to build a nuclear weapon, which continues at pace, is one of the biggest threats to world peace. There isn't a serious government in the world that wants the Iranians to acquire a nuclear bomb, and yet they're on the threshold of doing it. So why on earth isn't Keir Starmer supporting the Americans in their efforts to try to prevent it? It is absolutely mystifying. He's undermining the transatlantic alliance.
Is it mystifying, though, Mr. Johnson? Because it's only mystifying if you want the fiction to be understood as reality. It's not. Sure, he's on the narrow sense. He's right. There is not a government in the world, and I think that is categorical, that wants Iran to have a nuclear weapon, to include the Iranian regime. They don't want them to have a nuclear weapon, so they haven't. So that's just accepted. But then he says, it's mystifying why we would not help the United States prevent it. Not only does our intelligence say that they're not building a bomb, and have since 2003 said that, and as recently as March of last year, Tulsi Gabbard went before Congress and said that's still the case, that they have not made a decision to build a bomb, and they have not started. Their capabilities are there. Their capabilities are advancing. They talked about all that, but they hadn't made a decision, and they hadn't since 1979. So 47 years, they haven't. Allegedly, President Trump went in and obliterated their capability last year, less than a year ago, like 7-8 months ago. So why is it now that we're going to go to war against a regime that you claim was obliterated last year, and there's no evidence that they are starting another one? There is evidence that they're maintaining their capacity, and they say this openly, to reprocess for whatever purpose they have below the threshold of what's needed to make a nuclear weapon. And they say they're not going to give that away. They're not going to give in under compulsion. That is not the same thing as they're having a nuclear weapon, and oh my God, you have to go get them right now. That's just nonsense. That's just fiction. That's just a lie. And that's what gets notoriety. That's what gets coverage. Now, one interesting things I want to hear, but we got some other things to talk about this week too, but I want to show you a couple of things that I found really interesting, and I'm not really sure exactly what to make of it, and that is the major media. So now I started this show off here showing you these graphics about how we have 50% of our C-17 capabilities, a huge number of our C-5, so lots of transport capability. That we have, I think it's now upwards of 20% of our entire aerial refueling capabilities, 109 aerial refueling tankers, huge percentages of our fighter jets, all this stuff. Everything is on the ground now. There's one aircraft carrier ready to launch. There's another one that's steaming that way, getting close. You would think that, holy cow, we are on the verge of a major war, which could come within hours of this broadcast. And why is it when I go to the two major newspapers in the United States, I don't see hardly anything about it? Let's look, first of all, this is the New York Times. This is live here right now. This is a live rendering of the aspect. Let's roll down here. So you see there's, okay, well, can't do it. You see that there's something about the Supreme Court, global business, troubles on closing tax loopholes, food festival. That's a big one. So 6 rising fashion designers. So you got that up front. So those are really important. Tariff issues, midterms, more of this exercise weirdness, UFO stuff. Wait a minute, where is okay, now then we finally, on the New York Times, you have to get this far down before you have anything. And what's the headline? Why attacking Iran could be riskier than capturing Venezuela. Are you freaking kidding me? That's what you want to go to? That's where you're at? Is that this could be riskier than Venezuela? That you're even comparing those is really embarrassing. And then we go, okay, well, what about the Washington Post? Surely the Washington Post, Washington, D.C., this is also live here. And you see, let's see what they're looking at here. All right, well, there's more. RFK's got a shirt on this time at least. Investors, capitalism, more Supreme Court stuff. Apparently there's some snow coming this weekend, so hopefully we won't get locked in with that. Catholics, and I don't know whatever's going on here. Here's something about how are we going to spend $500 billion more, $500 billion more dollars on the military next year, CIA, blah, 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 going down. Chess, something with that, and painful. Oh, wait a minute. Where is it? Where is there? Holy crap. I don't see anything. This is the Washington Bloody Post, folks. And here, you don't even have a headline on the front page anywhere. All the way down. You see, I never even found one. And this is your mainstream media? Why are they silent on this? This by itself is a red flag. Now, at least it's not at the moment alerting everybody and trying to talk them into it like it was before the 2003 war, and it has been this past week. A bunch of folks, again, this whole Merchants of Death video I put together showed you quite a number of them, and that was only a limited number. There's quite a many more, especially on other networks. But so there is some of that going on here. But on your two flagship newspapers, the Washington Post and the New York Times, yeah, that's it right there. Thanks, Gary. You see one mention of it, and it's way down the fold, way down beyond the headline that people look at. And the only thing it's saying is, it could be a little bit more difficult than Venezuela. That's true. No one's going to take a look at that. So what you're having here is you have this massive amount of combat power. Again, 50% of our transport fleets, aerial fleets, 2 aircraft carrier strike groups in or near the waters, 200 to 250 fighter jets in range, ready to go. Everything is on a dime's edge, on a knife's edge, ready to go at any time. All that combat power Gary's showing on the screen right now. And the Washington Post is silent. So it's, what is that thing they always put on there that, let me see if I can go back to it. I'm sorry. I'm going to have to go back to this one because this is they're really poignant here. Let's go back to the Washington Post. And what is this at the headline here? Democracy dies in darkness. That's their big thing, right? That's what they claim. Democracy dies in darkness. And yet here they are, providing darkness on the potential eve of a major war. Maybe it comes tonight. Maybe it comes a week from now. Seems unlikely it's not going to come. But in any case, what we know right now is that we are right on the verge of it. Why in God's name would the so-called leader of democracy that's informing the American people be silent on it? That is not an oversight. That is not, well, I think RFK exercises are more important. I think whatever is happening with the snow coming, those things, really, war and peace that could get us plunged, that could get Americans killed, planes shot down, ships sunk. All that is on the table right now that could happen, and you're silent on it. And then the only thing the New York Times says is that it might be more difficult than the 2-hour operation in Venezuela, where we had inside help, and it was almost a complete risk-free operation. It was more made for TV than anything else. Why is that? That by itself should be a real problem for a lot of people, but we have what we have. That's why we have this show. That's why I think I've told you guys before, Gary Villapiano, who's our executive director, also is the one that really helped create the channel. He's the one that asked me and said, hey, what do you think about doing this show here? And part of his reasoning was, we're not getting this on the mainstream media. He worked in the mainstream media for a lot of years and left it in a lot of partially in disgust about what they weren't doing. And so now that we have the freedom to bring you the truth, where we're unintimidated and uncompromised, and we'll continue to do so. All right, let's move on to a couple of other topics, because that's not all that's happening here. I want to bring you up to date. One of the things we mentioned, actually, no, I'm sorry, we didn't mention it, but it did happen yesterday, and that is that there was a major Supreme Court decision that came down that said President Trump cannot use his tariffs, that struck down a lot of tariffs, and we're going to have to apparently repay hundreds of billions of dollars in tariff money that we've taken, et cetera. And Trump has been talking ad nauseum about how that helps him end all these wars. It's hugely important for his foreign policy and stuff. Well, he made some comments later in the afternoon tomorrow that are concerning on one hand and really troubling on another. Here's the first one, where he's talking about how actually I can do anything I want to.
I'm allowed to cut off any and all trade or business with that same country. In other words, I can destroy the trade. I can destroy the country. I'm even allowed to impose a foreign country destroying embargo. I can embargo. I can do anything I want, but I can't charge $1. Because that's not what it says. And that's not the way it even reads. I can do anything I want to do to them, but I can't charge any money. So I'm allowed to destroy the country, but I can't charge them a little fee.
No, Mr. President, you're not allowed to destroy a country. You're not allowed to do anything I want. No, you're not. And part of this Supreme Court decision came down to validate that you're not. You actually have to follow the law to an extent. There's so many things that he has done that are beyond the law, and don't have time to get into that, but they've been flooding the zone is the strategy they use. And so there's so many things and no one can keep track of it. But ever so often, there is still at least a glimmer of hope that maybe, and this was a 6-3 vote. Many of the conservative justices voted this. Of course, he blasted that and said it was all this horrible thing. But the bottom line is there was some limits. But that's only a limit insofar as it's actually applied. And President Trump went on to continue to talk about this and correctly, by the way, in this narrow sense, did say that it wasn't just tariffs that were off the board, according to the Supreme Court. It was a specific type of tariff, and that leaves them open for other opportunities, which President Trump took no hesitation to point out.
In order to protect, and it says so, in order to protect our country, a president can actually charge more tariffs than I was charging in the past period of a year under the various tariff authorities. So we can use other of the statutes, other of the tariff authorities, which have also been confirmed and are fully allowed. Therefore, effective immediately, all national security tariffs under Section 232 and existing Section 301 tariffs, they're existing, they're there, remain in place, fully in place, and in full force and effect. Today, I will sign an order to impose a 10% global tariff under Section 122 over and above our normal tariffs already being charged.
Okay, this just shows the pernicious nature of the president. It's like, oh, You're going to tell me I can't do something? He's going to throw a tantrum and say, all right, I'll show you one better. I'll say this one area where you told me I couldn't do anything, and I'm going to toss a 10% on this category, which is within my power, on the whole bloody world. Everybody is going to pay another 10% tariff. Now, history being a guide, he'll back off of this at some point in the future. But right now, out of this tantrum, he'll just say, I have power and I'm going to use it right now. And it is not insignificant. And it is actually related, I think, concerningly, to this Iranian situation, because his mentality, as shown in that first clip, is I can do anything I want. I can do anything I want. I can destroy a country if I want. That's by itself. Maybe I even should have led with that. I don't know. Because that is really alarming that the president of the United States thinks he has the power to, quote, do anything I want. And he's demonstrating it right now with the tariff issue, and that he can destroy a country if he wants to. And of course, look, he already knocked out Venezuela, just stole their president right in broad daylight, came in, or in that time, sorry, but basically, you know what I'm saying, broad daylight. Now that he has coerced the remaining regime into doing what he says he wants to, stealing their oil in broad daylight, literally just taking it as we want, and then deciding on his own whether he will or won't, or how much of their revenue, of their resource he's going to allow them to have. We'll see how that works out. But this is just broad daylight theft. And then you see that's the mentality of the guy that's going to make the decision with no guardrails, no constitutional guardrails, no legal guardrails in the United States or international law. He will literally do whatever the hell he wants to do. That is a dangerous thing. And this is why. Because out of pernicious, out of anger, out of pride, out of who knows what, he can just decide on his own that he is going to take the United States into war, which will cause the deaths of American service members, the destruction of American war machines, the deaths of our allies in Israel. All of these are people that should not die, and that if only he doesn't, with order this strike, will continue to live. Obviously, that's on top of the Iranian people, but it's clear that neither President Trump nor anybody in the administration cares anything about the lives of Iranians or Venezuelans or Cubans or anybody else, frankly. It doesn't appear that he even cares that much about American people, as he's perfectly willing to put their lives at risk here by ordinance, if that's the way it goes. At least that's on the table. Something to think about. He's not the only world leader that had something to say, though. Here, a couple of other leaders here in Russia. First of all, I'm going to start with Dmitry Medvedev, because he made a comment here talking about, looking real quick at the Russia-Ukraine war. We've talked a lot of times about Kaya Kallas and how a lot of things she says is detached from reality. Well, interesting enough, we had Medvedev coming out in military uniform, and maybe he's done it before, but I've never seen it. This is the first time I've ever seen him making a statement in military uniform, and I think that we should pay attention to this.
Вы сказали, Кая Каллас. А кто это такая? С этим человеком не общаются даже коллеги. То есть, видимо, они не считают для себя уместным снизойти до уровня целого высокого представителя по международным вопросам Европейского Союза для того, чтобы с ней провести встречу. Если вы обратили внимание, с ней не общаются министры иностранных дел многих европейских стран. Я уж не говорю про госсекретаря США. Там вообще как бы непонятно, кто это.
So obviously he's just mocking her, but that just shows that the Russian leadership has the confidence to say, we don't even care what the Europeans are saying anymore, much less their senior diplomat. Now, historically, Russia has given great deference at the diplomatic level to every country, even those they don't like. And this is the first time I'm aware of. He said some stuff. Let me be clear on this. In his social media post, especially those on Telegram, he has actually mocked a lot of people here. But this is the first time I can imagine, or I'm aware anyway, in uniform, in public, on screen, making these kinds of comments. And you see his face is carrying a lot of confidence and self-righteousness when he's talking here. But this just shows you kind of where the Russian leadership is, that they are feeling pretty good about where things are militarily, that they're not even worried about mocking the senior diplomat on the European side. Now, there was another Russian leader here, the Russian leader, Vladimir Putin, who, by the way, I don't know if you'd seen it, there's been some concern that he hadn't been seen in public in like 13 days. And he decides to come out in public yesterday. And he also makes a comment, also directly related to the Europeans.
И мы собираемся нападать на НАТО, да? Ну что это за бред? И все понимают, что это бред. И обманывают свое население для того, чтобы обеспечить выколачивание денег из бюджетов. 5%, 3,5 плюс 1,5, да? Значит, и объясняйте этим провалы в экономике и в социальной сфере.
You know, what's interesting about that is not even that he said it, but it's how he said it. You see, Putin is well known and very famous for his calm demeanor, even when he's talking about war and peace. You remember that one we've shown many times, especially from June 2024, to where he's laying out the conditions that they're willing to have a negotiated settlement. And he very methodically, matter-of-factly talks about what he's willing to do. If he's talking about this difficult conversations with the United States, even with Trump, he's always very calm and rational and measured. This time, you saw there was some flashes of anger that he allowed to be seen on the camera. And that's one of the things that he's really frustrated about, is because so many in the West always talk about, certainly Kaja Kallas, Mark Rutte, Ursula von der Leyen, definitely, I mean, Boris Johnson in the past, but you got other current leaders, Keir Starmer, Emmanuel Macron, definitely Friedrich Merz. They constantly talk about, and a lot of leaders from Poland, Sikorsky, Foreign Minister Sikorsky, always talk about how Russia's coming to get us next. If we lose in Ukraine, they're coming to get us next. And I've told you that I don't care what they say. I don't base it off of what Putin is saying here. I base it on capability. I base it on what can they do and what can't they do. And that's what matters. Do they have the physical capacity to project power into a hostile environment with an Article 5 with 32 nations that are allied together? Do they have the power to transport that much combat power through fire and to be able to conquer any land? No, they don't. They have designed their force for national security. So they have, I think it's around 180 kilometers, if I'm not mistaken. They have the ability to project power beyond whatever the line of contact may be, about 180 kilometers, and that's it. Because their focus is on designing a system that can defend their borders, not on one that can conquer the territory. So their physical infrastructure and their defense doctrine calls for a defense of their homeland, not for a conquest of anybody else. So not even listening to them, you can already see that that's nonsense. And it is intended to whip up fear and anxiety among their populations to justify sending all this money into the defense industrial capacity. But then when you see Putin, you see that he's really frustrated, because if you believe this on the Western side, then you're not going to come to any kind of negotiated settlement, because you're saying, no, we can't do that because it's going to lead to, a potential war. You're coming for us next. And if the people believe that, and a lot of them do, then you see that's going to complicate coming to a negotiated settlement. And President Putin showed some frustration on his face there, really uncharacteristic in public. Now, that's not just if this is all it turns out to be, just a bad day, and he, showed this on screen, that's one thing. But if this shows that they're getting more and more frustrated, then this may say that they may be less and less willing to do any kind of negotiated settlement. And at some point, possibly even in a spring offensive, who knows, maybe they just decide there's no point in even going through the rigmarole of face value negotiations if this is just going to be settled on the battlefield. And so many of our guests, Larry Johnson being one of them, says, yeah, this is going to be settled on the battlefield. John Mearsheimer, he always says this is going to be settled on the battlefield. If the day that Russia says, okay, we're not even going to pretend otherwise, we're just going to start going, things could change pretty dramatically on that battlefield, and we may see an outcome that we in the West don't like. We'll keep following that for you as well. Now, listen, the last thing I got for you today, one of the first time ever, we're going to have a poll. We want you guys to vote. So we want you to get ready to go into the comments section, and we want you to give in your 2 cents here, and maybe probably on Monday, we'll come back with the results of this. So we'll be looking through here, and just your votes are going to be either Lindsey Graham or David Petraeus. Okay, that's going to be your two options. That's what we're going to look for. So make sure you vote the right way. Now, let me tell you what you'll be voting on. We're going to show you two of the worst sound bites that we may have seen this week, and you're going to decide. Your vote is going to be which one is actually worse. Here's what you're going to see. You're going to see, first of all, Lindsey Graham, who's going to be saying, yeah, I don't even care about American troops. I'm ready to go into harm's way to fight Iran because I'm just a lust for war with Iran. So I'm going to, God bless our troops here. So that's what you're going to see, Lindsey Graham. Then right after that, you're going to see David Petraeus, who's going to be looking at the Ukraine military and actually making an argument that who cares about their lives here? Let's just have more war with Russia too. So you can decide who's worse, Lindsey Graham or David Petraeus. First, Lindsey Graham.
To those who may participate in this endeavor, God bless you. God keep you safe if that day does come. Could our soldiers be hit in the region? Absolutely, they could. Can Iran respond if we have an all-out attack? Absolutely, they can. I think the risk associated with that is far less than the risk associated with blinking and pulling the plug and not helping the people as you promised.
I'm sorry. I'm gonna cheat a little bit here because I've seen him already. So I'm going to vote for Lindsey because he is ready to sacrifice American lives instead of the quote word that we gave to help protesters in Iran. But that's just me.
Yeah, that is going to be hard to beat. That's going to be very hard to beat. But I'll tell you, you'll see. Petraeus is bringing the steam here. He's bringing the heat.
Right. I should not underestimate him. Please continue.
This is Ukraine's greatest generation. It's very similar to the American greatest generation. But I think when the cessation of hostilities begins, we're going to see Ukraine as the greatest military industrial complex in the Western world. And they're going to build a new country with new economy, not the old extractive economies of the past. And they will, I think, over time come to see what Ukraine's greatest generation will have done, not just on the battlefield, but also in building an entirely new country focused on new technologies and new economic endeavors.
So Danny, I have to warn the audience. There's a little bit of a subtitle to this of what's going on about what he's saying there. So you heard him say he really wants. It's almost like the Disneyland of the world is going to happen, right? The new Ukraine. What are they capable of? Who know? We don't know. We can't vision. But with the right money and the right people involved, they're going to go in there and they're going to turn this into one of the greatest places on earth, right? I want to point this out. You know how we love to play this for David Petraeus about the football, and we love to let that be the epitomizing his thoughts on how he thinks and what he does. And my gosh, you know what? You know what this reminds me of? When you leave something in the refrigerator and it starts to like get moldy and you don't get rid of it and you just leave it there. What's he thinking here? We've gone through that. But anyway, let me go back. I want to stop this for a second. I want to show you something there. Oh, it moves so quickly. KKR, David Petraeus with KKR has been there for years, I think now, since he stopped being a general. Well, I'm going to show you a little something here. He talked about developing Ukraine. Not too long ago, just back in December, Jared Kushner, Eyes Apollo, and who is that? KKR, what are they going to do? To join Ukraine's post-war reconstruction fund. Is that why Ukraine's going to be so amazing in the years to come, Danny? What do you think?
Because that money's going to be funded right into David Petraeus' pocket, I think.
Exactly. So we just watched an advertisement, really.
Oh wow!
So that Ukraine can finally become the place it needs to be on this planet. We'll make sure it happens. We'll be back in it.
Yeah.
How about that?
Okay. So I guess in that regard, it is more of a toss-up. It's a harder one. That's why we need you guys to come in. So either David Petraeus or Lindsey Graham. That's what we want to see, and we're going to come up with the.
I'm going for Petraeus on this. So insidious. Okay. How dare he come on and promote that when you know his back pocket is getting filled with the cash?
Yeah. Okay. So we need you guys to break the tie. I've got Lindsey Graham. Gary has
definitely. KKR, baby.
KKR, man. That's what it's all about. Gary, there's one final thing we need to talk about today. And instead of asking these guys to give us some votes, we're actually going to thank them for something. What is that?
Big thanks, guys. Wow. And some of you have already been saying in the comments that you're congratulating us for making 300,000. It's because of you guys. We are so grateful. Danny and I, we don't take this lightly. We understand you could go a million places and spend your time. And the fact that you come here, you guys have subscribed and, you take your time to spend with us regularly. It means a lot to us. And I just want to let you know how grateful we are from the bottom of our hearts. And we thank God for blessing this channel. And you know what we're here to do. And we're grateful that you want to do it with us.
Yeah, we really are, Ned. And we're live right now. It's 300,955 subscribers. And it keeps going up here. And probably in a couple of hours, we'll hit 301,000 as it continues to go up there. And I never would have thought that, us just telling the truth here just 2.5 years ago from 0 to 300,000 plus. We really are grateful. And
yeah,
it sounds a little cheesy, but it's so true. And we definitely believe it. Without you, we get nothing. I mean, Gary and I would just be talking to, empty air if it wasn't for folks watching. And so many of you are so loyal, and we're especially grateful, especially in the comments. We commonly see, a lot of the same names pop up all the time.
Yeah, we see you.
Some of it we talk to you guys on occasion. So we're really, really grateful for all of you guys.
When we're not polishing, you guys have been so good to us when we're polishing in 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes. We'll be there in a minute. But we really are just trying to, get the rough edges off the show when we're doing that.
Or getting stuff at the last minute, because oftentimes there's information is changing so rapidly.
Yeah,
we
amen.
want to get to the most updated stuff, and sometimes we have to delay a little bit. But your patience is most appreciated.
Indeed.
And we thank for you too. So
thank you for your loyalty. It really means a lot.
It really does. We appreciate you guys, and we'll continue to be unintimidated and uncompromised, because that's what we have set about to do, and it's what you deserve. We're not going to do like the Washington Post and the New York Times, which is to blind you from things that matter, that could directly affect your very lives and your economy. We're going to bring it all to you. We're going to keep doing that. Thank you very much, folks, and we'll see you on the next episode of the Daniel Davis Deep Dive.
Good. See you.